Hey guys, it's Yuta. So today I'm going to share signs that a Japanese guy might be into you. Of course, these signs are not exclusive to Japanese guys, but compared to many other guys, Japanese guys tend to be less direct and less verbally expressive. So being able to read these signs can be handy. Number one, he wants to interact with you in his own way. It's completely normal that when you are into somebody, you want to spend time with that person. When a guy is into you, naturally he tries to interact with you. If he's a friendly person, it's going to be very straightforward. He will just talk to you. If he always talks to you, even though he doesn't seem to have any apparent reason, he might be into you. But if he is shy, it might not be so obvious. But he still tries to have some kind of interaction with you. He may put himself in a situation where it's possible to interact with you. In a classroom, he may sit somewhere near you. He might not want to sit right next to you because he doesn't want that kind of attention, or he may think you wouldn't like that. But he still wants to be in a place where he can see you. He can sit in front of you or behind you or somewhere near. So if you notice, you always kind of see him somewhere near. Even though there's no apparent reason, there's a chance that he may be into you. And if you are interested in him, you can even say hi. But it's important to understand the psychology behind his behavior, because it comes from a place where he wants to spend time with you. And this also applies if you have a chance to hang out with him. If he's into you, he doesn't want to leave so easily. So he might come up with some type of excuse to spend more time with you. And it's definitely a good sign if he wants to spend more time with you, even though he seems busy. If he says something like, oh, I've got a lot of work tomorrow, I have to wake up early, but maybe we can stay a bit more. Maybe we can go somewhere else. That's a good sign. On the other hand, if he comes up with an excuse to leave early, that's not a good sign. Especially if he doesn't seem very busy and gives you very vague reasons. Like, oh, I've got some stuff to do. That might not be a good sign, because if he's actually busy and he doesn't want you to think that he's not into you, he's probably going to be more specific about the reason why he can't hang out with you longer. So there's a difference between being actually busy and not being into you. Number two, he often looks at you. This one's easy to understand because if he is attracted to you, he obviously wants to look at you. But he might not do it in an obvious way because everybody knows that it's not good to stare at people. But since he does it quite often, you might catch him looking at you for half a second. And back in school, I often pretended like I was just looking around, when my real intention was to look at a girl I liked. But of course, I didn't want to just stare right at her. And interestingly, sometimes when I did that, I ended up making eye contact with her because it turned out she was also trying to look at me. So when that happens, it's definitely a good sign. He's trying to look at you and you are trying to look at him. It's mutual. Number three, he pays attention when you speak. Now, let's say you are talking to a group of people, and he may be part of the group, but you're talking to somebody else. But you feel like he's paying attention to every single word that comes out of your mouth. And when you say something, he responds very, very fast. For example, somebody else asks you, oh, what food do you like? And you say, oh, I love ramen. And as soon as he hears that, he jumps into the conversation right away and says something like, oh, I love ramen too, even though you are talking to somebody else. And if that happens multiple times, there's a good chance that he wants to talk to you. He's paying attention to you. Because if he's attracted to you, he just can't help paying attention to you. And this can be quite unconscious. So he just can't help it. And on the flip side, if he doesn't pay attention to you, even if you are talking to him, like, he's looking around, he doesn't really reply, or when he does, it's very slow, there's a good chance that he's not into you. But also, he might be shy, so even if you're talking to him, he might not be making eye contact with you. But if he's just shy, he will still be paying attention to you. There might be an awkward silence, but he's still paying attention to you. Number four, he compliments you. It's a pretty common thing that if a guy is into you, he wants to compliment you. But he might not be so direct about it if he's shy. For example, back in my teenage days, I had trouble complimenting a girl directly, saying something like, oh, you're so pretty, or I think you're great. I would feel very embarrassed. So I would find ways to compliment her on something else, something more subtle. And a lot of guys are kind of like that if they are young, shy, and inexperienced. But they still want to compliment you. So they might compliment you on some specific skills. If you are smart, they might say, "Oh, I noticed that you are very smart." Or if you are good at sports, they might compliment you on that. Or if you are a career-driven person, they might also compliment on that. The less romantic, the easier for these guys to compliment you. And they might also defend you. For example, if you make a mistake at work, they might say, "Oh, it's not a big deal. I'm pretty sure you will be fine." Or if you are feeling bad about yourself because your boss criticized you quite harshly, he might defend you by saying, "Oh, he's too harsh. I think you are a great person. I'm sure you will be fine." So something like that. Number 5, he keeps a conversation going. If he's into you, he wants to talk to you as long as possible. So he might ask you a lot of questions about yourself, or he tries to find a topic to talk about. This sign is more reliable if you guys are in a situation where he can easily leave. Because if you're just stuck in a train on a business trip where nobody can leave, he might try to talk to you to avoid awkward silence, so that might not count. But if you just bump into him randomly in the street and he starts talking to you and he doesn't want to leave, even though he seems to be in a rush, that's a good sign. Of course, if he's super shy, he might be overwhelmed by the idea of talking to you directly, so he might not try to continue the conversation. And when that happens, texting might be a good thing because many shy people are more comfortable texting somebody. And if he tries to text you a lot, even though he doesn't have to, that's a good sign. But some people just don't text much, so just because he doesn't text you a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean he's not into you. But if he doesn't want to talk to you in person or texting, so even if you ask questions, he just gives you one-word answers, that might not be a good sign. One-word answers are pretty annoying, but sometimes it's their way of telling you that they're not into you. But some people are just not good at texting, so you should try both, in person and texting. Number 6, he wants to help you. A lot of guys want to help you if they are into you. This can be as simple as carrying some heavy stuff for you, or some technical stuff which is considered traditionally somewhat masculine. For example, if your phone is full, he might help you delete some app data and cache. But they might not always be direct, especially if they don't know you well. For example, let's just say you like milk tea and he knows that you like milk tea for some reason. He wants to buy milk tea for you, but he doesn't want to be too obvious and direct, especially if he doesn't know you well. So he buys milk tea for everybody in the office, hoping that you would notice it. So sometimes it's quite subtle and it's easy to overlook. Another common situation is when you're sick, he's really worried. He asks you, "Oh, are you okay? Do you need something?" Because he wants you to know that he cares about you. Or maybe he tries to be overly helpful. "Oh, let me just help you with your work so that you can go home early." And he also notices when you are sick because he's always paying attention to you. So if you understand the psychology behind these types of behavior, you can understand why somebody does these things. And again, these signs are not exclusive to Japanese men, because men, women, it doesn't matter. A lot of people do these things when they are into somebody. And there's also one thing you should be aware of. A lot of people do these things even though they're not interested in you romantically. They might just want to be friends with you. But if a guy you don't know very well starts doing these things, I think there's a good chance that he might be into you romantically. But maybe in the future, I will talk about how to tell if a guy is interested in becoming more than just a friend. But if you are interested in getting to know Japanese men, obviously it's better to speak Japanese because most of them don't speak English fluently. And when it comes to dating, you don't want a huge language barrier because dating somebody can be already difficult even if they speak the same language. By the way, many women told me about their experience where a Japanese guy was interested in them, but they couldn't really communicate because they didn't speak Japanese. It was too bad because they also thought the guy was cute. So if you don't want to miss opportunities to date a cute Japanese guy, you need to learn Japanese. And if you want to learn Japanese with me, I can teach you the kind of Japanese that Japanese people actually speak today. So click the link and subscribe to my email group Japanese with Yuta. Alright, see you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.